Now in today's video, we're going to be looking at my team selection ahead of Game Week 10. Of course, we're also going to be talking about my transfer strategies and targets coming up for the next few game weeks. And of course, discussing what to do with Erling Haaland. Now, before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as now we are trying to hit 15,000 subscribers by the end of the season, and it is only possible with your guys' help. First off, let's of course start off with what we do every single week, and it is the data from Rob T FPL. Make sure you are going and dropping him a follow on Twitter. Some amazing work he puts out every single week. I don't include all of the graphics he actually puts together as well, just so you guys can go and check it out. Go and give him support, as I always do suggest. But as we can see, I do feel there's a common theme kind of starting to emerge, and I definitely feel the betting markets are on top of it and starting to notice this trend. It is a lack of clean sheets, and as we can see here across the board, there's actually some pretty decent fixtures for likes of Liverpool, City. You know, Arsenal don't have a bad fixture, but in terms of those clean sheet percentages, we are seeing extremely low numbers here across the Premier League, to be honest. A lot of kind of the closer clashes as well, we are seeing pretty much similar numbers across the board as well. So the bookmakers are actually really unsure on how to kind of predict what is going to happen in some of the games this weekend as well. So it makes for a really interesting opposition and kind of thought process going forward with FPL. Do we continue to plough money into that back line, or with such low percentage chances of clean sheets like this every single week predicted from the bookmakers, do we start to shift our funds elsewhere to more premium midfielders? Of course, maybe looking at some attackers as well, or maybe just trying to justify squeezing in free premiums to our side. I do feel it is a topic that, you know, maybe could be worth a little bit of discussion around today's video, and of course maybe a little bit of dialogue with yourself as well, thinking, okay, how many points have I scored from the likes of Gavardio, Porro, Trent over the past few weeks, and maybe is it worth just downgrading them to a cheaper defender that has decent fixtures or rotates nicely with a couple of other cheaper defenders and utilizing that money elsewhere. So maybe you want to think about, again, like I said, with the bookmakers having such low kind of predicted clean sheets coming up for the next few weeks. In terms of where the goals are going to be at, I'm probably looking at captaincy. We'll obviously discuss it a little bit further in today's video. It is looking like Liverpool and City are going to be the two teams that we are going to be looking to target this week in terms of those projected goal numbers as well. Liverpool looking quite favourable, and I do feel with the frailties and injuries to Lewis Dunk, I do feel like that could be the fixture that obviously captaincy could have a big bearing on, maybe going against Haaland this week with Mohamed Salah. But still, City's projected goals are still pretty decent away at Bournemouth, but I think they've actually been quite a resilient side so far this season and obviously kept Arsenal at bay. I know that game had 10 men, but they still managed to do it for large parts of that game before the red card anyway. Right, let's move on. Let's take a look at the 11ify data. If you want to go and take a look at this for yourself, I will leave a link in the description. This is projected clean sheets over the next 6 game weeks. 11ify's model is a lot more generous in terms of those percentages, so I do feel it is really useful to kind of compare tools and maybe not draw narratives off just one set of data and maybe look to compare others and see potentially could we spot a trend, or maybe the betting markets are being a little bit reactionary to how few clean sheets we've had over the past few seasons, because obviously, you know, there haven't been many the past few weeks, have there? They really haven't. 11ify model, I know that they use previous seasons' data as well to obviously kind of impact future results as well. So it's not just over these opening set of fixtures. Of course, it does lean a little bit on last season's results as well. As we can see, there are the top 3 teams within the Premier League at the moment. I would say Arsenal, Manchester City and Liverpool kind of leading the way, and that does make sense. Interesting teams for me though, of course, Manchester United, new manager bounce potentially on the cards from match day 10 onwards. 11, 12 and 13 are their big standout fixtures, and I definitely think Dalot could be a fantastic player to go and pick up within that defensive line as well. In terms of some of the cheapies, maybe if you're on a wild card or looking for cheap defenders, maybe looking to take a little bit of money out the back line, obviously, Everton have got some pretty stellar fixtures across the next few. Palace as well, they managed to keep a clean sheet against Spurs, the second they've had this season as well. So it does look like they are still a pretty good defence. I know as well they're not like right at the bottom for XG conceded either. Fulham have a pretty decent set of fixtures coming up as well, so Robinson could also be a potential shout to go for. In terms of teams we probably want to start to shift off of, obviously we know the bottom set of teams already. Nottingham Forest, the next few fixtures for them do get a little bit more tricky, so if you did pick up an Aina or a Milinkovic. Over the next few weeks, you do need to have an exit strategy, I would say, to obviously offload these assets. Probably after game week 13, that looks like a really tasty fixture in terms of those clean sheet percentages. As we can see, Brighton across the board as well, pretty rubbish, and obviously with the Lewis Dunk injury as well, probably again one team we want to be looking at. And Aston Villa as well falls into that same bracket, and next two difficult fixtures. After that though, in 12 they do start to pick up again, so if you do have players that you potentially could bench Konza for, maybe you just keep him around for those 2 weeks on the bench. That's the plan I've got. I'm not going to waste a 4.5 million transfer on that. I rather would use it to get in some of the big boys, and obviously we'll talk about my transfers in a little while. Let's go ahead, let's take a look at the projected goals for the next few weeks. Liverpool across the board for the next 3 are looking very, very saucy. So owning Mohamed Salah is going to be a little bit of a blessing. As we can see in there, in that game week 12 fixture as well, really, really fancied for their projected goals. Interestingly, City quite high as well within that match day 12 one. I wasn't quite expecting that. I thought Chelsea would be a lot higher as well, with them obviously facing off against Leicester, but a pretty good set as well, as you can see, post game week 12, and that probably is going to be the hop on point for a lot of people with Cole Palmer as well. Spurs, obviously their match day 11 fixture, I do feel like the best captaincy option in that week is going to be a Spurs player, so maybe if you have kept hold of Son, could be worth just, you know, maybe maintaining him, keeping him across that period if he is still fit and available. Of course, wait to see what Ange Postecoglou says in regards of his press conference. One team that has definitely stood out towards the bottom end of the table is Nottingham Forest. I do feel like if you've got Chris Wood, play him for the next 2. Post that, I would be maybe suggesting look to move to Cunha. Of course, as we can see here, the projected goals have been quite low, and I think that was the first time Forest have scored 3+ goals this season, and obviously it was against Leicester, so you would expect them to do quite well in a game against a lower opposition. However, before that, the highest they had scored was 2, and that was in one other game as well. So Forest aren't a free-flowing attacking side. Chris Wood has massively been overperforming on his own underlying data as well, so I do think longer term Chris Wood probably will see some more blanks, so I don't think now is the time to jump on him. I think if you've got him, keep him for the next few is perfectly acceptable. If you've not got him, probably not worth going there in my personal opinion right now. I think there's probably better teams to be targeting higher up in this projected goals kind of column for the next few weeks, and obviously some really, really great fixture swings as well. The likes of Wolves with Mateus Cunha, obviously Vista entering the scene as well. I think they're better pickups for the next 5 than Chris Wood in my personal opinion. Moving on, something that has kind of been emerging, I would say, within the community is potentially going without Erling Haaland for the next few weeks, and it's something that I tried to do at the start of the season, and obviously if he'd have played like he did for the past 4 game weeks at the start of the year, I would have looked like a genius. Instead, he decided to bang in 2 hat-tricks and make me look like an absolute fool and decimate my rank because everybody in the game owns him. However, people are starting to build a narrative that potentially you could go without Erling Haaland up until game week 20, so I wanted to look at that. Is that a possible or a viable solution to potentially go without Erling Haaland for the next few game weeks? Now, I think the hop-off point for me, if I was to sell Erling Haaland, would be 12, because you do see a big swing for both Liverpool and, of course, Chelsea and Arsenal as well around this period. You could also include Spurs in here, obviously, if you wanted to go for Son as well, but I think with him being a little bit cagey in terms of his injury issues at the moment, we're probably just going to stick with a midfield three of Salah, Palmer, and of course Saka, who've been extremely consistent at the start of this season and have been absolutely smashing it out the park. So for me, the hop-off point probably is going to be that match day 12, so when City face off against Tottenham. That week, you've got a choice between Salah or Palmer as your captaincy option. You know, Bukayo Saka at home to Forest isn't the worst, but I think with Forest being a pretty good tight defence in terms of those XG conceded models, I'm probably not going to go there. So it would be between both Palmer and Salah, and I think Salah probably would edge it for me in terms of that week. The following week, obviously City play off against Liverpool. Liverpool are the home team as well, so again, doesn't really bode well for Erling Haaland. Chelsea have got Villa at home, so probably not going to be the one, so it probably would be Saka in terms of your captain for that week. Following week, you're probably looking at Cole Palmer, it's pretty obvious as well. Then the following week, you could say that Haaland is the best captaincy there with, of course, Crystal Palace, but both Arsenal and Liverpool potentially could cover that off with Everton and Fulham. The following week, again, Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool all have great home fixtures, and you can make a case for any of their players that game week as well. Following week is Villa away, but again, you're looking at the top two. They've both got great fixtures, so you're probably, again, not going to consider Haaland for captaincy. Then that week, Haaland does have a great fixture, but so does everybody else. And I do feel like Everton are probably going to be the stiffest defence out of all of those teams on that list. And again, with Ipswich being at home, I think Saka probably would take the armband, or potentially Mohamed Salah against Leicester. The following week, again, probably it's a toss-up between him and Palmer for captain. You could also throw Salah into the ring as well if West Ham continue to look a little bit ropey. And then, of course, here is game week 20 where you probably would go and pick him up. But let's say, for example, you don't have him, or you were to stick with him, how many weeks realistically would you be captaining Erling Haaland? And let's be generous here, right? Let's say this game week 19 one against Leicester, you're going to go with Haaland. Fair enough. Then the probably other one is going to be this Palace fixture, because I don't think you go with Everton. I think you go with Saka against Arsenal. So 2 out of the next 10 game weeks, you are going to captain Erling Haaland. Why would you spend £15.4 million on a player that you are only going to captain twice in the game? It seems redundant to me. It just doesn't seem like a good use of the money and a great kind of way of spending the budget, if you like. I feel there is so much more scope in going for these players, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and kind of just tossing around the captains between those 3 players, because they've been so good at the start of this season, and I think they will continue to be really, really good. Obviously, the problem is Haaland is so highly owned. He just is. And I saw that at the start of the season. If he turns it on at any point and he's most people's captains, I'm looking at that Crystal Palace week, you could be in for a rough week. I'm just warning you. I am warning you. I've been there. It's horrible. But at the same time, sometimes you have to take a little bit of a gamble in this game. And I think sometimes going against the narrative of maybe having Haaland across this period, or having Haaland is essential, maybe it's not the case this year with his elevated price point. Obviously, the problem you do have is getting back to him, so you won't be able to kind of spread the funds around, but you have a lot of weeks here to build up decent transfers. However, do remember this is over the Christmas period, lots of games, lots of injuries, lots of player suspensions as well that of course you might have to deal with across this period as well. So it might not be easy to bank as many transfers as you potentially think. Sometimes just looking at this going, oh yeah, green, green, red, red, red. Sometimes you forget that the games were within like a 2 to 3 day space of each other as well. But just something I wanted to talk about very, very briefly. Again, let me know your thoughts on this one. What are your plans with Erling Haaland? Are you planning on keeping him or potentially looking at getting rid of him? Get your comments in. Let me know. Right, let's finish up before we head into the team itself. Of course, let's talk about the captaincy for this week. And I'm actually leaning towards Mohamed Salah. I think he has the better fixture for me. A home fixture against Brighton. Like I said, they're going to be without Lewis Dunk. They conceded such a sloppy goal in the final minute of the Wolves game. I definitely think that will have knocked their confidence as a side as well. Salah, as we can see here with the Fantasy Football Hub predicted points model, is expected to outshine Erling Haaland as well. And if we compare head-to-head records as well, Salah scores a lot more goals against Brighton than Haaland does against Bournemouth. He's only actually managed to score 1 goal in 4 games against the Cherries. 4 of those being, 4 assists as well to top on that. So it's not the worst in the world, but he's not a player that scores a lot. Bournemouth as well, haven't been conceding lots at home. And like I said, for me, Salah at home against Brighton, a pretty leaky defence, feels like the better option as well. However, just something to maybe sway your mind back in the other way, of course, is the anytime percentage chance of returns. Erling Haaland is higher, and I do feel it is those goal scoring percentages that are definitely carrying him through this period as well. Cole Palmer doesn't look to be the worst captaincy option in the world. I think if Erik ten Hag was still there, I maybe would have been tempted to go there, but I do feel like there will be a little bit of an uplift in performance now that Erik has gone. It did seem like the players potentially maybe down tools, whatever you want to say about them, and whether or not they did that, fair enough, that's up to you, that's your opinion. But Haaland is still really, really fancy for an anytime return, so maybe still could be a decent captaincy option. But for me personally, I think I am going to sway towards Mohamed Salah. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. Are you team Haaland or are you team Salah for this game week? Okay guys, let's move on into the team selection of today's video. Starting off first with our points from game week 9. We obviously played the triple captaincy. It didn't work out. Haaland managed to pick up 2.33 expected goal involvement and only come away with 1 goal and 6 points. On another day, we'd be sat here, we'd be absolutely laughing, we'd be flying. Unfortunately, it didn't go that way. However, the rest of the team had a great game week. Obviously, Visser we brought in for Vardy. Vardy scored, but Visser got the goal and assist plus a bonus, so I'm very happy with that one. And Buemo with a 15 pointer. The guy is probably the best asset you can find in the game right now. Cole Palmer was my other transfer in as well for Son, who picked up the injury. Again, we're 10 points better off there, so an absolute win in my eyes. And of course, Mohamed Salah, just doing Mohamed Salah things and being very, very consistent. Moving on to how the team is looking for this game week. If we switch over, this is currently how the team is lining up for, of course, game week 10. So we've got Raya in goal. I'm pretty happy with that. No kind of qualms on that one, to be honest. Obviously, Arsenal really haven't kept a clean sheet in the past few weeks. Again, it is a position that maybe I do want to look at going forward. However, my argument always is goalkeepers are such a low kind of point scoring position that I'm not going to waste my valuable free transfers getting a different one in. I'll just wait till the wild card. At that point as well, maybe Arsenal defensively will have improved and probably will keep some clean sheets along the way. So I don't think Raya will be the worst goalkeeper in the world at that point. Obviously, there's a big fixture swing as well coming up around game week 12 for Arsenal, so I am pretty happy about that one. In terms of the back line, Mikalenko, Everton, 2 clean sheets in their past 3 games. Have been really, really good. Branthwaite back as well, so it fills me with lots of confidence. 8 Nuri. The only problem with him is he is on 4 yellow cards. I brought him in last week because I needed to obviously make up the funds to go and get Cole Palmer in. But as we can see here, the problem is I don't want him to pick up another yellow, but I know he will across this period of Wolves' amazing fixtures. So hopefully it's not in this Crystal Palace game, so he does miss the Southampton one next week. But he is very, very attacking. 5 goal involvement so far this season, so pretty happy with him. Forest have been a great defence for Aina as well. Pretty consistent again with the point scoring, so I'm very, very happy to play him over Konza and of course Greaves, who's injured. So yep, that makes complete sense for me as well. And Buemo's in here off the back of his 15 pointer. Again, the guy is probably the best value asset you can get in the game right now. He's still not the Brian and Buemo season, still isn't over, by the way. There's 5 amazing fixtures coming up for Brentford as well, so a very, very easy hold for the next few weeks. So if you've not got Brian and Buemo in, what are you doing? Go and get him in this game week. Cole Palmer, again, for me, was a player that I wanted to have in, ideally for 12. But, you know, we take the points we got last week. I was a little bit concerned that he would actually pop off against Newcastle. He did have a decent game. Chelsea could have had a penalty. He had a goal ruled out for offside as well, which was marginal. So, again, on another game week, we could have had a mega haul from Cole Palmer, but wasn't to be. United, I was feeling a lot more confident about, but now they've sacked Eric Ten Hag. I do think there will be an uplift in terms of performance, so maybe not the mega haul I was expecting from Cole Palmer this week. Rodgers is going to play because I've got a toss-up between him and Konza, and I think Rodgers could very easily score in this game. It looks like Ange has potentially lost the plot a little bit at Spurs, maybe losing the dressing room a little bit as well, and potentially could be on his way out of the club if they continue this dreary start they've had to the campaign as well, which would be a little bit of a shame because they do play some nice attacking football at times. However, defensively are very, very questionable. In terms of my captain, we already spoke about it. It is going to be Mohamed Salah this week. I'm very, very happy with that decision to give the Egyptian king the armband for another game week as well. We saw with the betting data that projected goals as well from 11.5 are also fancying Liverpool to be one of the top scoring teams this game week. Salah as well, top of predicted points. So again, all that stuff for me is kind of adding up in my mind and making me think he's the best captain. Calvert-Lewin is going to get one more week. However, I'm still undecided about that one. Maybe we get the holy coin back out and maybe that decides where we go with that one. But Southampton away, surely the guy has to score at some point. 3.3 expected goal involvement. I think it might even be a little bit higher over the past few weeks. Has been ridiculous, but still no goals for Calvert-Lewin. Hopefully the Southampton fixture is where he gets himself back on the horse, and then maybe we reconsider where we're at with him following on from next game week. Moving on to our next striker, like I said, it is going to be Johan Visser. Very, very happy I brought him in. 0.92 expected goal involvement so far this season, per 90, by the way, is ridiculous. Now, I know he's played a lot less games than some other people. I think he's around 6 games he's played, but still absolutely joke data. The guy's an absolute machine as well. Links up so great with Mbeumo. Big fan of him. Haaland's going to remain, like I said, up until maybe around game week 12. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second as well, what my plan is for Erling Haaland going forward. But for this week, he does remain. He's going to be the vice-captain. Still could end up with the captaincy, but I think with his not overly prolific goal-scoring record away at Bournemouth, or at Bournemouth in general, I'm probably not going to give him the armband, and I do favour Mohamed Salah this game week. So let's look how my team would look. Let's look at my transfer that I potentially could make this week. Of course, it would be Dominic Calvert-Lewin out for Matheus Cunha. I think Cunha's had a great start to the season, a pretty dismal Wolves side as well. As you can see here, the data is still looking pretty decent for him over the next few. Some great fixtures coming up for Wolves all the way up until around game week 18. Obviously, we're licking our lips looking at that Southampton fixture. He did miss a little bit of part of training yesterday, so we are going to have to wait and see what Gary O'Neill says in his press conference before, of course, we do pull the trigger on that move. If it's not this week, it probably will be looking a little bit more likely next week that Matheus Cunha does come in for Dominic Calvert-Lewin. In terms of how my team is probably going to look around game week 12, obviously with us building transfers over that time period, this is probably where we're going to be heading towards in terms of our side. So I am currently planning on going without Erling Haaland. From game week 12 onwards, we're going with a triple up in midfield of Palmer, Saka and Salah. A front three of Nicholas Jackson, Visser and Cunha. I'm not 100% convinced about Visser. Maybe we'll see what other forwards are kind of kicking along at that point. Maybe one of the other cheaper boys as well. I don't want to spread my funds out too much. I want to try and keep them as kind of isolated as possible. So we do have a pretty easy route to go and get Erling Haaland back within the side, because I imagine FPL Towers will probably keep his price around the 15.3. Maybe even 15.2 if enough people sell him off, but I don't think that's going to happen. So we're still going to have a massive gargantuan budget to obviously go and afford him. But overall, this is probably how the side will be looking, or very similar to how it will be looking around game week 12. Obviously dependent on Erling Haaland's fixtures. We're going to bank some transfers over the next few weeks. Probably the only move we are going to make is next week, moving Cunha to DCL. That still allows us a pretty much open kind of field on what we want to do in terms of our transfers and how we want to go and attack game week 12 with the big fixture swings coming up. Let me know what you thought of my team or anything we did cover in today's video. If you've got any questions about your team as well, get them in the comments section. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in game week 10.